Hi, Gooby here. Today, I'd like to talk about what do you do when you have a neighbor that continues to hurt yourself and other neighbors and doesn't seem to stop. In fact, seems to be getting worse. This is a theme that I've come back to repeatedly because it's something that's very complicated. There's so many facets to this. And I don't think I've really come to a satisfactory answer myself. And so a lot of times these videos are me trying to work out something very complicated in my mind. And this problem it happens repeatedly. It recurs. It recurs on multiple levels. On the level of just immediate family members. It occurs on the level of extended family. It occurs on the level of friends, on the level of town, social circle, on the level of a city or a state. It also occurs on the level of nations and globally as species, human species, to other species that we share this planet with. What do you do when one of your neighbors consistently hurts yourself and others? Well, I think a good starting place is to talk about two wolves. I learned this from comments on a previous video that people talk about that there's two wolves that live inside of us. One is the light wolf that is a wolf of love and compassion. Love is wishing for the well-being of your neighbor. And there's the dark wolf that is the wolf of destruction and hate. And the wolf that prevails, that takes over, is the wolf you feed. Now, I think everyone has good and evil in them. Even the most evil person has some good in them. Even the most saintly person has, I don't know if I said that right. Even the most evil person has some good in them, and even the most saintly person has some evil. But we have choices. We can choose how we want to live. That's the feeding, which wolf you feed takes over. So clearly some neighbors have chosen to feed the dark wolf. And what is that? I think it's important to try to understand that. So I think, well, that's just where I'm going to head with this talk, and then we're going to talk about what we could do. If I hurt my neighbor and I have some empathy just means that I feel, I have some capacity to feel what they're feeling. That's an emotional empathy. There's cognitive empathy, meaning that I can understand their perspective, their viewpoint. I can see things from where they are in their shoes. Empathy comes in varying degrees. You can turn it up and you can turn it down. You can even turn it off. But most people have some level of empathy on. If you turn it off completely all the time, that's when you become a sociopath and murder people and do awful things. But most people have some level of empathy turned on. So if I hurt my neighbor and I inflict suffering and pain on them, and I have some level of empathy, I will feel that pain and suffering reflected back onto myself. By hurting them, I'm actually hurting myself, maybe to a lesser degree, but to some degree. I am feeling what they're feeling. I understand their perspective and the injustice that I am dealing upon them. Most people will stop. Most people will say, gosh, by hurting them, I'm hurting myself. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt myself. Most people. But some people find some benefit out of hurting others. And so they want to continue doing that. In order to do that, you have to turn your empathy off or turn it way down so that you cannot feel what your victim is feeling. Because if you did, you wouldn't be able to continue doing that. Now, there's been several people recently, over the last year, loudly proclaimed that empathy is a weakness. And I think that that is a huge billboard sign that lets everyone know that they're doing something that if they felt empathy, they wouldn't be able to keep doing. What is that? It's not like they're baking a pie for their neighbor and then surprising them with it. Because if you bake a pie and you know your neighbor likes that blackberry or cherry pie or whatever, or apple pie, and you even put a scoop of ice cream next to it, and then you bring it to your neighbor, and you know they like that, and you surprise them, and they're like, oh my gosh, a slice of apple pie with vanilla ice cream, my favorite. This is so great. And they eat it, and you watch them eat, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so yummy. Wow, what a great pie, thank you so much. Well, you're going to feel some of that good too, because of empathy. Well, if someone who surprises their neighbors with apple pie and ice cream regularly feels empathy, they're not going to think, oh, empathy is a weakness. I don't need empathy. Why would I have empathy? Because all I feel is like how happy my neighbor feels that I brought them an apple pie and ice cream, and I can feel how much they're enjoying eating the dessert. I don't need empathy. That's for weaklings. No, that's not the people that say that. The people that say empathy is a weakness are doing things that hurt other people. If they actually felt empathy towards the people that they're interacting with, they would feel the hurt that they're inflicting on others. They wouldn't be able to continue doing what they're doing. That's why certain people say empathy is a weakness. It's a huge billboard sign that says, stay away from me. I hurt other people. That's what when you say empathy is a weakness, that's what I hear when I see someone say that. I'm like, oh, I'm staying clear away from that person. Well, I mean, the opposite is true. If someone says empathy is a strength, I'm like, oh, that person. I think I want to stick around that person. All right, so now that we've established somebody who continues to hurt other people lacks empathy. I think they lack insight into what they're doing, because if they realize what they're doing, I think most people would stop. So there's usually a layer of lies, a cloak of lies that surrounds them, that makes them believe, and the people in their close circle believe, that what they're doing is good. It's actually helping others or themselves. It's the right thing to do. And these lies can be very deceiving and convincing. People around can be like, oh yeah, we got to do that because that's the right thing to do. That's a good thing to do. So I'm going to hurt my neighbor. It's the right thing to do. We all see that happening right now in this country where I live, well, in my country, in the United States, but also in other countries, the Middle East, Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, but not just in war zones, just in just everyday life. I mean, right now we got all kinds of crazy stuff happening in the United States. We got ICE terrorizing citizens and non-citizens alike. We got people thinking that it's cool to be racist again. It's cool to be a jerk and hurt your neighbors. it's the in group now to be lacking in empathy, to turn your empathy off, to treat your neighbors with disdain, and be selfish. People tell themselves all kinds of lies to continue doing this. Oh yeah, we got to do that for the safety of our nation. Okay, the GoPro overheated, so I dunked it in the cold water here, and so hopefully it will it'll go for another while. So yeah, people tell themselves all kinds of lies to go along with hurting their neighbors. There's lots of lies that are told, and they can be wrapped up in patriotism, wrapped up in nationalism, wrapped up in religion. These lies can be very convincing, and they can convince a lot of people to hurt their neighbors. So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do in this situation? Well, I've tried confronting some people who have consistently hurt others. I confront them. I say, hey, look at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. You're hurting me and that person doing this. That almost never works. That person either doesn't care or doesn't let themselves know what they're doing, or they will say, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. And then they do it again the next day. It's like they're incapable of not doing that. They want to do that. They're incapable of knowing that it's hurtful. They don't let themselves feel that. They don't let themselves acknowledge it. It's a very strange phenomenon that the person perpetrating the violence oftentimes doesn't know that what they're doing is violent or hurtful, despite someone pointing it out and it's like explicitly saying this is very hurtful. Well, I didn't do that, and if I did do that, it wasn't that bad, and if it was kind of bad, it was for a good reason. It's how a narcissist thinks. So, yeah, directly confronting the person is necessary, but I don't think it's very effective. This person, this kind of person, usually surrounds themselves with people that have bought into their lies and sometimes carry out the hurt that the abuser wants to inflict on others. Sometimes people willingly carry it out for them because they've fallen for these lies that the abuser is telling. And it's not just on a national level, it could be on a family level. So if confronting the abuser directly was not that effective, and I think it's necessary because maybe that person just has really no idea, and it's like they've only done it a few times, and then you point it out and you're like, hey, look, this is really hurtful. I just want you to know that this is how I feel, and this is what other people feel, and we wished you would not do that again. And then they're like, oh my God, I had no idea that what I was doing. I'm so sorry. And they actually change. So I think that can happen. And I think confronting is a necessary step. But if you confront and they deny that anything ever happened, or if it did happen, it wasn't that bad, or if it was bad, they did it for a good reason. Well, then you're in a troublesome situation. I think walking away, if you can, is probably the safest thing. But what if that person is... What if you're a kid and it's a parent? What if you are a citizen and it's the ruler of your nation? It's not so easy to walk away. I mean, you could run away from home. You could emigrate to a different country. You lose all the connections that you had. Start over as a foreigner in a different land. I mean, that's an option. But it's an option that not that many people can do. As a child with an abusive parent, well, you're relying on the parent for your survival. As a citizen in a nation, well, you've grown up and lived and developed your life in a certain area. You would have to sever all those ties to emigrate. So that's not really an option for most people. What else can you do? If you can't confront them and convince them to stop, well, I guess really important thing is most people have some empathy. Talk to your neighbors. Let them know what's going on. In fact, they will let you also know what's happening with them. An abusive person will try to isolate people so that the people that they hurt repeatedly feel like they can't talk to anybody. And if they do, they're going to be at risk for more pain and suffering, or that nobody will believe them. They may feel that their life is in danger. But by talking to your neighbors that have maintained some level of empathy, well, they'll be able to understand what you're going through. You'll be able to understand what they're going through. In fact, the collective stories will strengthen the bond between your neighbors that are being hurt. Even if they're not directly being hurt, well, they can use their empathy to understand how you and the other neighbors are being hurt. Together, then you can confront the abuser and their supporters. In fact, by hearing all these stories, some of the supporters will say, well, gosh, I thought this was a really good idea to go along with this because, it sounded like there are good reasons to hurt these people. But, now that I'm actually hearing stories from the people we're hurting, I don't think it's actually a good idea because it actually kind of hurts me too. I think that's probably the best way to deal with this if you can't separate yourself. It will, I think, convince some supporters to say, whoa, this is not a good thing to do as a human being. I think I'm going to, if I really do care, if this is a political thing, on a nation level, if I really do care about my country, I think I should take care of my neighbors. But not everyone's going to do that. Some people are going to go to the grave, believing in the lies that tell them to hurt their neighbors. Well, I think that's the best thing to do. But what if that doesn't work? What if getting everyone on this, well, most everybody in the village on the same page, and everyone agrees, wow, oh my gosh, this person is so hurtful to other people, and they've created this clique of villagers around them that are supporting this person and carrying out their hurtful acts on everybody. And the fact that people are talking about it makes this hurtful person even more hurtful. That's a difficult situation. I'll briefly tell a story of a very hurtful person that is from 1800s. I think that story has some importance to this situation I'm talking about. There's a lady who lived in the 1800s, early 1800s, New Orleans. So we're going back in time. New Orleans. She lived by the Mississippi River in the city. She had the tallest house in the area. From her roof, you could see the river. You could see over everyone else's house. She grew up in a family that was very wealthy and connected. Her cousin was the mayor. She held these lavish dinner parties, expensive wine, delicious food, furnishings that everyone in the town talked about how beautiful they were. But people also talked about how the slaves, this was before slavery was abolished, the slaves that she had all appeared very haggard and downtrodden. How her daughters seemed chronically depressed. How she's been widowed twice. And her third husband, who's many years her junior, doesn't appear happy and is rumored to not spend that much time around the house. In fact, one of the neighbors was concerned about the well-being of that person's slaves and hired an attorney to go investigate. This is a true story. And that attorney showed up to try to investigate, and the woman, her name is Madame LaLaurie, told that attorney, "You're wasting your time. I wouldn't hurt the most humblest of creatures." The lawyer turned around, reported what he was told to the neighbor, and things continued on. Then one day, the neighbors woke up to screaming, and one of the young slave girls jumped from the roof to her death. They reported this to the police. The police came. They found the body of the young girl slave hidden in the well. Well, there were laws at the time that you had to treat your slaves with a basic amount of humanity, feeding them, clothing them, and providing them shelter, make sure that they're okay. And she obviously violated this, so she was forced to sell all her slaves. But with her power and wealth, she had her relatives buy the slaves, and then she smuggled them back into her home. Everyone could see that this lady is circumventing the laws. She is above the law. The laws don't apply to her, but they apply to everybody else. And she continues to hurt the people under her control. Well, not even 1 year later, one of her slaves, who's chained to the stove, the cook, she set fire to the kitchen. She would rather die than continue the way that she's living. And she hoped that by setting the fire, it would alert the guests in the house about what's happening in the house. Well, the guests saw Madame LaLaurie trying to save furniture and not trying to save the slaves that are in the house. So they went around and tried to find the slaves to save them. They found the cook who started the fire in the smoke, chained to the stove. They freed her. They went upstairs to the attic. An attic that no one else was allowed to go into except for Madame LaLaurie. In the attic, they found something truly horrifying. 7 human beings suspended from the ceiling with shackles around their neck, with spikes to prevent them from looking around too much. Many of them had their limbs torn off. They had their limbs broken and reset so that they looked like a crab instead of a human being. Some had their eyes gouged out. One had a hole in their head past the skull, and it looked like someone was repeatedly sticking a crude stick into the hole and swirling around their brain. All of them had whip marks. There was blood splattered over the cowhides. Well, this is a truly horrifying sight to see. They brought down these slaves, these human beings that were suspended in the air by their chains. They couldn't walk. They carried them to the jail, where people could see what Madame Lalaurie had done to these 7 individuals. Well, the sheriff refused to arrest Madame Lalaurie. And so all the neighbors came, and they said they had to see with their own eyes. But there were rumors going around, gossip. And to some, it had confirmed what they suspected. To others, they were completely outraged and shocked that the social butterfly at the top of the high society, the most beautiful, charming lady, could do something like this. All the neighbors in the city, they got together and they decided, this is not right. The sheriff is not arresting this person. We have to take matters into our own hands. They went to the mansion. And with the mob outside, the gates flung open, and Madame Lalaurie escaped in her carriage. The mob then proceeded to destroy the mansion, take whatever was valuable, rip everything else down, leaving the walls. Madame Lalaurie escaped to France, where she lived until she died. And her son wrote a letter many, many years later to his brother-in-law saying, "My mother, she keeps insisting on going back to New Orleans, but it appears that she has no recollection about the reason why she had to leave." Well, that's a truly horrifying story of a truly horrifying person, a person that fed the dark wolf. Even many years later, she had refused to allow herself to know what she had done. You cannot confront someone like that and then convince them, hey, what you did was wrong. They're too far gone. It's like the epitome of dark triad personality. Dark triad is a combination of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. When someone fosters these 3 traits, sometimes there's dark tetrad, which includes sadism, the pleasure in inflicting suffering on others. Once you foster these 3 or 4 personality traits, they're self-reinforcing, and psychologists say people cannot come back from that. You can't go up to someone like that and be like, hey, you should really stop what you're doing because it's hurtful to other people. One, they won't acknowledge that they're hurting other people. 2, they think they're a good person, they're doing the right thing. 3, they will attack you for trying to expose the truth. So I think it really takes a village to protect the village. It really takes the village, all the villagers, to communicate. The people that are hurt to speak up. For the other villagers to protect the people that speak up. To listen. What are they saying? To feel, to empathize, to feel. What are they feeling, and how did the situation unfold? And it can be very tricky. The lies can be very deceiving. But I think in the end, truth prevails. As long as people are talking, communicating. To maintain a lie is a lot of effort. And even the most tempting lies, well, they're work to believe. Truth is just the truth. There's no work to believe that. It's reality. Well, those are my stories today about what do you do if one of the villagers are hurting others and they refuse to stop. They keep going. Yeah. Bye.